a little while ago, Rishi Sunak, current Prime Minister of the UK, decided to do a similar policy, and it was very clearly like inspired by the policy from New Zealand to do a similar thing. And so for those of you who don't know, the core of the policy that New Zealand was going to adopt, and which the UK potentially is as well, is to introduce a new smoking ban wherein everyone born after a certain year would never be allowed to legally buy cigarettes. So everyone that's 14, yeah, so that would be, maths, 2009? This is one that I think does feel, I mean, there's something in one of the articles about how when it comes to the UK, Rishi Sunak has suggested that he might do the vote in Parliament as what's often called a moral vote, or a sort of ethical vote, in terms of where political parties don't whip their politicians to have to vote a certain way. A free vote, thank you, Sir Richard. A free vote. And I think it is because this is one of those topics, like there is both a left-wing and a right-wing argument for letting all adults smoke. There is both a left-wing and a right-wing argument for wanting to ban smoking. So interesting. I'd love to hear various thoughts on this. So the UK version is that anyone who is 14 years now, born in 2009-ish, would essentially never be allowed to legally buy cigarettes. And it's quite an interventionist policy, right? One of the things that you find, particularly with industries that involve addiction in some way, is that the balance they have to strike is that they want to get in with people when they're young, right? Because if you can get a user addicted to, whether it's to cigarettes or to gambling or to whatever else, if you can get them while they're young, right, you've got them for much, much, much longer. However, if you go for that market too much, then the sort of libertarian leanings of a lot of conservatives and the kind of what about my rights feelings tend to get overshadowed by the think of the children aspect and the what about society's morals aspect of conservatism. And suddenly what you get is a pushback like this. Because, inside conservatism is kind of two wolves, one of which is everything should be free markets and we should have no rules and we should have no restrictions on trade, etc., etc. On the other, we have this really social conservative thing where we should have lots of social rules in how we should behave. And in things like smoking, we really see those two things begin to clash, right? Because on the one hand, even the most conservative parent probably doesn't think that their 13-year-old should be smoking. And that comes into tension with their belief that that company should be able to do whatever it wants. So a couple of people have brought up the NHS in the chat, the fact that in the UK, we have a public health system, and how do you take into account that with your smoking laws? And the way it happens at the moment is that cigarettes are taxed a huge amount. So the rate on cigarettes is 16.5% of the retail price plus £5.89 for a packet of 10 cigarettes. So smoking rates have been going down like massively. I mean, you see it all the way up here at over 45%. And so there is also an argument of to what extent is such a ban useful if rates are going down so much? I mean, I will say I'm coming at this from a point of view of generally being in favour of this policy. I actually think it is good. It's fascinating that there is a 49% strongly support for this polling, which is interesting. I don't think I would have assumed that it would have been quite that high. I think I had the sense that maybe it would be more positive than negative. But I mean, once you add together the 49% and the 22%, right, you're at 71% of people in some way support the proposed smoking ban. Cherry Lad says, so is there going to be a future where 70-year-olds are getting ID'd in shops? Well, like, presumably, yeah. I wonder how they do it, because at the moment, in the UK at least, whatever you're buying, if it is age restricted, you have to look over 25, I believe. At one point, I don't know if at one point they were going to, like, it was 21 for a while. I don't know if they were going to make it 30 at one point. The idea is that, but it's the same for everything. So if it's like an energy drink, which is 16, it is the same. You have to look over 25. If it is a bottle of beer, which is 18, you have to look over 25. I don't think there's anything that is, I don't know what else there is that's age restricted that's like older than that. But I wonder how that would have to change. Yeah, when the age is like 30, do they have to do like challenge 40, but just for that thing? A good kind of counter to some of these policies is, does it potentially open up a black market which is the same with a lot of the conversations around vaping, where you go, does it push people to buy devices that are potentially more harmful or stronger? But also, as someone was saying much earlier, you don't get the tax from that, right? That's the broad kind of overview of the policy as it existed. However, as we've seen, it has now been rolled back, and it does seem to be that they've rolled it back primarily for tax reasons, that they want to claim the tax from selling cigarettes as part of their budget calculations, and therefore they've brought it back solely for that reason. Yeah, it is a bit of a kind of like the children killing machine is actually quite profitable for the government, so we are going to have to turn it back on, I'm afraid. Oh, that's an interesting point. So Lucy, for herself in the chat, says that this seems really silly to me because people will still spend their money on something that is taxable, just not on cigarettes. Which is a good point, right? Sometimes we view these things and we go, oh, well, there's going to be a deficit there from people not spending money on something. However, realistically, they're going to put their money somewhere else in the economy.